Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a geopolitical power center, right? A symbol of dominance in the 10th century that was just deliberately sunk beneath a massive man-made sea.
Yeah, it's quite a story.
Today, we're diving into the ghost fortress of Sarkel, or White House, a really key site of the legendary Khazar Khaganate, now basically waiting for us at the bottom of the Semlyansk Sea,
Right, so our mission here really is to cover the whole story of Sarkel.
its entire lifespan.
Exactly. The sources we have, they talk about, how it was built by the Byzantines, which is amazing in itself, this fortress on the steppe.
Right, like a high-tech outpost.
Totally. And then there's the mad dash in the 50s to dig it up before the floodwaters hit.
A real race against time.
Absolutely. And now the really cool part, how underwater tech and even AI are trying to, well, read the site now that it's submerged. It's quite something.
Sarkel was absolutely central, wasn't it? Strategically positioned there in the lowlands of the Don River. To understand why it mattered so much, you have to realize it controlled that choke point between the Volga River and the Don River.
That connection was everything.
Yeah, if you control that, you control regional trade, influence, security, the works.
And what's fascinating here is that the origin story itself is, well, it's high-level diplomacy. A political bargain, really.
Between the Khazars and the Byzantines.
Exactly. The Khazars, this incredibly powerful Turkic group, they realized they needed, better defenses than their nomadic tech could offer. So around 840 AD, the Khazar Khagan sends this special delegation to Constantinople.
To ask Emperor Theophilos for help.
Yep. That's what the sources say. They needed Byzantine engineering expertise.
So basically asking their biggest trading partner for like an advanced weapon system, or at least the fortifications for it.
Pretty much. Advanced fortifications capable of standing up to serious siege warfare. And, well, the Greeks agreed. It helped them too, right? Having a strong ally against threats from the north and east.
Okay, so the engineers arrive, and they hit a snag.
A massive one. They're out there in the steppes, modern southern Russia, and there's no stone. No suitable building stone anywhere nearby.
You can't really build a fortress without stone, can you?
Well, that's the problem. But instead of giving up, the records from Emperor Constantine Porphyrogenitos, they show the engineers got incredibly creative.
How so?
They set up massive kilns right there on site, and they constructed the entire fortress out of burnt brick.
Wow. That must have been a huge undertaking.
Oh, colossal. They even made the mortar by crushing river shells into this fine powder.
Resourceful.
It really was, and that technique worked. The bricks they made were standardized square, just like the ones used in major Byzantine centers like Chersonesus on the Crimea.
So it proves the quality was there, the Greek expertise.
Absolutely. And Sarkel stood for centuries, a testament to this alliance, this engineering feat.
But there's a twist to that diplomatic trip, right? The one that brought the engineers over. Some kind of spy story.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Our sources detail that the Khazar embassy, the one asking for engineers, was joined by these suspicious individuals.
Suspicious how?
Well, they identified themselves as Rus. And they apparently couldn't get back to Scandinavia the usual way through Khazaria, so they asked the Byzantines for safe passage home, but via Western Europe.
Sneaky.
Right. And they were granted passage. They eventually get hauled before Emperor Louis the Pious, Charlemagne's son.
Okay.
And Louis hears their language, immediately suspects they're Vikings, calls them Svion, Swedes, basically, and detains them for a bit.
Wait, so these Rose guys used the Khazar diplomatic request as a cover to sneak west.
Looks like it, precisely. And this makes the story connected to Sarkel really important historically, because that detention, that's noted as the very first dated mention of the name Rus in any historical source.
Huh. So Sarkel's founding is directly tied to the earliest recorded movements of the people who'd later form, well, Russia.
It connects all these threads, yo.
And that context really underlines what Sarkel was built for. It was purely military, purely strategic, not some big city.
Not at all. It was pretty small, actually. Just over 1 hectare, maybe 100 by 200 meters.
And crucially, no surrounding town, no posad, no cemetery or necropolis.
None found. It was all about controlling that Volga-Don region. And the Greeks, well, they wanted the Khazars strong enough to act as a buffer against the growing power of the Arab Caliphate to the south.
So that was its job, a key piece on the 10th century chessboard.
Exactly. Now let's jump forward like a whole millennium to the 1940s. In a very different kind of geopolitical game, almost wiped Sarkel off the map entirely.
Right, the Soviet era, the giant infrastructure project.
In the late 40s, early 50s, the whole area around Sarkel was condemned, scheduled for flooding to create the Semlyansk Sea Reservoir.
Which was needed for the huge Volga-Don Canal project, another massive engineering feat.
But disastrous for archaeology. It meant they had a ticking clock. They knew the site was going to drown.
So a rescue mission.
A massive, frantic one. Led by Mikhail Artemonov, who later became a giant, director of the Hermitage Museum. Between 1949 and 51, his expedition, the Volga-Don New Construction Expedition, threw everything they had at digging up Sarkel before the water came.
And I heard some footage of this dig actually survived, like old newsreels.
Amazingly, yes. Cinematic chronicles, they call them. Thought lost, but fragments turned up recently in the Krasnogorsk archive. It gives you this visual window into just how desperate that race against time was.
Wow. But the story gets even more intense when you look at who was doing the digging.
Ah, yes. The labor force. Our sources reveal many were women called kolosnitsi.
And for listeners who might not know the term from the Soviet era,
Hmm.
what does that mean?
It's chilling, really. These were women arrested under the notorious law of the spikelets.
From 1932, penalizing people for picking up leftover grain?
Essentially, yeah, for trying not to starve. And they faced incredibly harsh sentences, often years in the gulag camps.
So these women, under this immense pressure, end up doing hard archaeological labor.
Exactly. But here's the strange part, the paradox. The archaeologists, Artemonov's team, they apparently treated them relatively well, fed them.
Okay.
And the women reportedly considered the incredibly strenuous digging work paradise compared to their previous lives or the fate waiting for them in the camps.
It's hard to comprehend,
Isn't it? They were even heard singing traditional Cossack folk songs while they worked in the trenches, finding safety, maybe even a kind of grim joy digging up this lost fortress.
What a poignant detail.
Yeah.
So Artemonov digs frantically,
Right.
and then you mentioned he left the trenches open. That sounds careless, but you said it turned out to be a gift.
The massive gift, decades later. It was
Wow.
crucial. His team didn't backfill the excavations. They just abandoned the site as it was, trenches open, walls exposed.
And then the flood came.
Instantly preserving everything exactly as they'd left it, like hitting pause, it created this perfect underwater time capsule.
Wow.
And that, combined with these incredibly precise maps made way back in the late 19th century by earlier explorers, Sizov and Popov.
They mapped it before the dig.
Yeah, they provided the perfect ground truth map of the undisturbed site. So we had a before picture, and Artemonov gave us the during excavation picture, frozen in time.
Okay, so fast forward to today. Sarkel is underwater. How deep are we talking?
It varies. The reservoir level fluctuates, so anywhere between, say, 9 and 18 meters deep.
And researchers started looking for it again recently.
Yeah, starting around 2019, groups like the Underwater Archaeological Society began using sonar, diving.
And they found it. How could they be sure?
The technology confirmed it perfectly. They used hydrosonar, mapping the unique shape of the fortress area on the reservoir bed, the ditch, the raised platform, the old riverbed.
And it matched the old maps.
Matched the Sizov and Popov plans exactly. Then divers went down, found those signature square Byzantine bricks, confirmation. They were definitely in the right place.
Okay, now this is where it gets really futuristic.
Yeah.
The AI proposal. The team's using some seriously advanced gear now, right?
Mhm.
What are profilographs and magnetometers? Sounds like sci-fi.
Hey, it kind of is. Think of it like this. A magnetometer measures the magnetic field, those burnt red bricks. They're full of iron, so they're highly magnetic. They stand out like little historical beacons under the water.
Okay, magnetic signals from the bricks
Mhm.
and profilographs.
They're like advanced sonar. They can effectively see through the layers of clay and sand sediment on top. They give you a cross-section image, like a slice, showing what's buried underneath.
So you get magnetic data and these cross-section images of the whole submerged fortress.
Exactly. And remember Artemonov leaving those trenches open. It means the ruins aren't buried under meters of thick silt. They're just lightly dusted with sediment.
Ah, so you can get clearer readings.
Much clearer. And crucially, we know the exact centimeter-accurate pattern of the individual bricks in the areas Artemonov actually dug out back in 51.
Because of his detailed drawings.
Precisely. Those 1951 drawings become priceless training data. The proposal is to use those hyper-detailed drawings as the ground truth.
Training an AI.
Yep.
Train an artificial intelligence using those known brick patterns. The AI learns to connect a specific magnetic signal or a specific pattern on the profilograph with a specific arrangement of Khazar-era bricks.
Okay, I think I see where this is going.
Once it's trained, the AI could potentially look at the data from the unexcavated areas.
And predict the brick layout just from the magnetometer and profilograph readings.
That's the idea, allowing for non-invasive remote exploration, potentially mapping the entire structure without ever digging again.
That's incredible, using AI to digitally excavate a submerged fortress.
It's definitely cutting edge. But while we're talking about the site being submerged, we should probably mention the cost of that dam itself.
The Semlyansk Sea.
Yeah, the project that buried Sarkel. Well, it's now causing some severe long-term problems. The reservoir is silting up badly, which affects irrigation downstream, and it's had huge environmental and economic costs for the whole region. Not to mention other historical sites it damaged, like the nearby Semlyansk settlement. A familiar story with massive 20th century projects, unfortunately. The unintended consequences. Okay, so the Semlyansk Sea buried the physical remains of Khazar Sarkel. But that loss sort of forces us to dig into the other Khazar mysteries, right? Like the big one, religion. Why Judaism?
Ah, the great Khazar riddle. It's fascinating. They were positioned right between these two massive, aggressive, and frankly hostile religious empires.
The Islamic Caliphate to the south and east, Christian Byzantium to the west.
Exactly. Choosing either Christianity or Islam would have immediately sucked them into the orbit of one power and made them an enemy of the other. Constant conflict.
So picking one meant becoming a vassal state, basically.
Pretty much. So the theory goes, they chose Judaism as a kind of strategic, non-aligned third option.
Cover.
It allowed them to maintain their independence. By adopting a monotheistic faith, one that wasn't seen as simple paganism, they could deal diplomatically with both the Muslims and the Christians. Neither side could just dismiss them as barbarians.
But crucially, they didn't have to swear allegiance to the caliph or the emperor.
Exactly. Preserving their sovereignty. It was likely a very calculated political move, as much as a spiritual one.
But despite this strategic conversion, the actual physical evidence for Khazar Judaism is pretty thin on the ground, isn't it?
It is notoriously scarce, which is why it remains such a debated topic. Really, the most tangible finds are these things called Moses dirhams.
Coins.
Yeah, silver coins, often found way up north, like in Gotland, Sweden. They're based on Islamic designs, but have these Hebrew-like references to Moses and Aaron. They really stand out.
So concrete evidence, but limited.
Very limited. And there was a building, Pletnyova, identified maybe as a synagogue, but that's highly disputed among archaeologists.
And the other big Khazar mystery, their capital, Atil. If they were so powerful, why can't we find this grand capital city?
Well, this makes us question what we mean by capital city for that time and culture. Arab historians who visited, they describe Atil not as, a stone city like a Kremlin or a Colosseum.
Not Rome or Constantinople.
Not at all. They describe it more like a semi-nomadic winter camp. The dwellings were probably simple structures, maybe yurt-like, made of reeds and clay, things that don't leave massive stone ruins.
Because it was fundamentally a steppe nomad culture, even at its peak. Their power wasn't necessarily expressed in monumental architecture.
Precisely. Their archaeological footprint, the way we identify them, is mostly through their distinctive ceramics, the Sultamayak culture. So this lack of a huge, obvious stone city explains why Atil is still so elusive, even though we know it was politically vital.
Okay, so wrapping this up, Sarkel is just a multi-layered story. You've got 10th century geopolitics, this incredible Byzantine engineering project for a non-Christian ally against the Arabs. Then the tragedy of that rushed Soviet-era archaeology, with the Kolosnicy singing Cossack songs in the trenches.
A really human element.
And now this amazing potential of AI and underwater tech to maybe reveal what was lost 70 years ago beneath the waves.
It really spans the centuries. And that leads us to a final kind of provocative thought, maybe an ethical puzzle that's very relevant right now. It comes up in our source material regarding another site, Phanagoria.
Ah, right, the ancient synagogue discovery there.
Exactly. Archaeologists in Phanagoria, also near the Black Sea, recently found an extremely ancient synagogue, possibly 1st century AD. I mean, incredibly early, incredibly rare.
Wow.
It's a unique, isolated find within a larger Roman fort site. But here's the dilemma. The field committees, the ones overseeing the dig, are apparently pressuring the archaeologists. They have to decide. Either preserve these incredibly rare synagogue remains in situ, potentially halting the rest of the dig, or dismantle the synagogue ruins entirely so they can complete the full excavation of the surrounding Roman layers, which is what their standard methodology requires for the whole site.
That's a terrible choice. Save the unique find or understand the bigger picture by removing it.
It's an excruciating choice. So the question for you, the listener, is, if you were in charge, what would you do? Preserve the one-of-a-kind structure or follow the plan to excavate the entire context, even if it means dismantling that unique discovery?
How do you balance preserving something unique versus the need to understand the whole picture?
That decision, excavate, preserve, maybe even dismantle, it's a constant, difficult ethical puzzle in archaeology today. Something to think about maybe as you picture those Khazar bricks still resting beneath the Semlyansk Sea.